By next week, the Northeast could be in for a significant winter storm. If we were to take a look at the latest forecast run of the GFS model at this time, we do see that there's a strong northwesterly flow right over the Northeast at this time that's bringing temperatures well below average. And in fact, many areas are experiencing wind chills well below zero. However, this will end relatively soon as a result of this ridge that's going to continue to move further eastward, and that will shift the winds from a northerly direction to more of a southwesterly direction, which of course will bring more of that warmer air from the south further northward, which will definitely bring the temperatures back up to earth throughout the Northeast as we approach the late weekend. But keep in mind of those very cool wind chills over the next 2 days for the Northeast. But continuing to move forward, we do see that should be relatively quiet. However, we will see a trough eventually move towards the midsection of the country, where we're going to see snow just to the north of the United States border. Maybe some snow in the northern portions of Minnesota and Michigan. However, for the most part, this will primarily be a rain event because, again, we still have this persistent ridge that's expected to build along the eastern half of the United States by next week, which will impose a very strong southerly flow that will warm up the temperatures a little bit too much, to the point where precipitation will primarily fall in the form of rainfall for much of the United States, at least for the early part of the week. And then we should see a storm system develop because right behind this trough, we should see just enough of a jet stream dip to create an unstable environment right around the southeast. So there's that possibility we could see some severe thunderstorms out of this, depending on how much instability there will be. I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. We're going to need to really see how much cold air will be behind this these areas of thunder showers. And then continuing to move forward, we do see that this low pressure system will move further northward, again primarily entirely a rain event, thanks to the much warmer than average temperatures we're seeing throughout the United States, thanks to this ridge along the eastern half of the United States. And then continuing to move forward, we do see that right behind this trough, we might see some snow throughout the northern portions of the Midwest, and we're going to see a significant jet stream dip where the winds will primarily come from the northwest, which will of course bring those temperatures well further southward. And if I were to continue to move forward, we do see that low pressure system develops as a result of this significant jet stream dip, which is creating a highly unstable environment right along the east coast, and that should allow this low pressure system to develop rapidly, and we should see convection develop right around northeast as a result of this instability, where we're going to see quite a bit of snow in the northeast, especially the interior northeast, and even the Midwest gets a little bit more involved. The GFS model has been showing a different scenario than what the European model is stating. The GFS model is a little bit more confident that we're going to see the snow showers move into the Great Lakes region, while the European model isn't necessarily forecasting that. And the reason why is because the GFS model doesn't expect as much ridging to build as further northward as the European model, where the European model wants to take a highly stable environment around the northern portion of the Midwest, while the GFS model wants to bring a more humid environment to the northern United States to bring that snow to the northern Great Lakes. So we're going to need to wait and see how the ridging will play out as we approach next week, because if we do see a little bit more ridging just to the north of the United States border, then we're less likely to see snow showers around the northern Midwest, because the low pressure system would be forced to move a little bit further southward towards the southeast rather than take a more northward track like the GFS model has been leaning towards with this scenario. So we're going to need to pay close attention to that, and of course continuing to move forward with the forecast as this storm approaches the northeast. We do see a heavy amount of snow, and like I said, there's going to be just enough instability for this low pressure system to intensify quite a bit as it approaches northeast. But what will be the key is where exactly this ridge will build, which has been a common trend with these past few snowstorms over the past several weeks when it comes to low pressure systems moving towards the northeast, because we've just seen a very strong ridge just take hold of the east coast, and that's been forcing a lot of low pressure systems to move just to the northwest of the northeast coast, which has primarily brought more rain events to the east coast rather than snow events, where the snow is mainly relegated to the Midwest and the interior northeast. And in this scenario, it seems like the GFS model wants to mimic it, but you need to keep in mind that we're still very far out, and there's still always that possibility we could maybe see the cold air move a little bit further eastward to where the bigger cities along northeast, such as New York City, Boston, and Philadelphia, get involved. So the forecast is far from certain, and the possibility that this could move to the East Coast still exists, because we're still 6 days out from this event. A lot could change between now and 6 days, so I'll keep you guys updated. However, since both the European and the GFS model are leaning towards bringing snow more so to the interior northeast rather than the coastal northeast, there might be that possibility that the snow would more likely impact those along the interior northeast. And it wouldn't be surprising us as well, because it's been a common trend this winter. We just seen a very strong ridge right up along the east coast, which has been preventing the snow from moving any further eastward. I'd say we might be a little bit more likely that the northeast, at least the northeast cities along the coast, such as New York City and Philadelphia, would experience maybe a little bit more rain than snow. But keep in mind, there's still always that possibility this trajectory could move further eastward, depending on how strong this ridge is that's going to be just to the east of the low pressure system. I'll keep you guys updated. Let's take a look at the European model scenario. The European model, at least for the early part of the weekend and into next week, is showing a very similar scenario to what the GFS model is stating, where we're of course seeing a very powerful jet stream dip take hold of the eastern portion of the United States, and then it'll be a primarily dry week for much of the United States, since we're going to see a big ridge that's going to dominate a lot of the eastern half of the United States, and we're going to see some snow showers move into the Pacific Northwest by next week as well, which should develop some thunder showers right along the southeast as we approach the midweek around Tuesday to the Wednesday timeframe. But behind this trough, it's definitely something we need to take note that there's going to be a pretty significant jet stream dip right behind it. So temperatures will be below average, but not only that, that will create an unstable environment around the midsection of the country for this next snowstorm to develop. And this is a snowstorm that's expected to impact northeast, and we clearly do see straight from the jump that the European model wants to bring this low pressure system further southward, more into Texas and Oklahoma rather than Kansas and Nebraska, because the European model expects a much stronger ridge build just to the north of this low pressure system. So we're going to see this ridge sort of force this low pressure system further southward, and as a result of the strong amount of ridging we're seeing between all sides of this low pressure system, the European model is expecting this storm system to move slower than the GFS model, because as a direct result of the lack of steering currents, because we have three different ridges that are pretty much trying to steer it a different direction. We have this ridge that's attempting to steer the storm to the west, and we have this ridge that's trying to steer it to the south, but we have another ridge right up along the east coast that's trying to steer it to the north. So thanks to the steering currents pretty much fighting to steer this storm towards the direction they desire, that's what's going to cause this storm to move slowly, because there's a little bit more uncertainty regarding which steering flow will exactly win out. Of course, this storm will move eastward inevitably as a result of the strong jet stream winds associated with the instability we're seeing, and of course the Coriolis effect. So this low pressure system will move further eastward, but a lot more slowly. So as a result, we likely won't see snow until very late in the weekend and into and potentially going on to 7 to 8 days out, which is a little bit further down the forecast range and what the GFS model is forecasting. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how much ridging there is. It's good to point out that the European model has been a little bit more reliable this winter, so it might be best to lean a little bit more to the European model's forecast scenario compared to the GFS models, but we can't completely disregard the GFS model either. But in terms of what the European model has been stating this winter and how it's been the more reliable model, I'd lean a little bit more to the European model in this scenario. And we still do see the European model bring a significant nor'easter to the northeast, where the interior northeast especially gets impacted with very heavy snowfall, potentially well over foot in many areas, especially in the higher elevations. But again, we see the same trend where a lot of the Interstate 95 corridor cities experience primarily a rain event. We're going to need to see if the ridging just to the east of this low pressure system become a little bit weaker to where we could confidently say that snow will move further eastward. And that's still a possibility, especially when we're talking about a storm that's around a week out. But based on the trend we've been seeing all winter, I'd say at this point, especially since the GFS model is also stating a very similar forecast, I will say that most likely the heaviest snow will be in the interior northeast, but again, along the Interstate 95 corridor, you want to at least be aware of this, because with weather, especially 7 days out, there's still a lot that could change. But since both the GFS and the European model are leaning towards this scenario, it could be more likely that the interior northeast would experience a little bit more of the heavy snowfall. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. And then beyond that, we could see a jet stream dip that could maybe enhance the risk of snow for the northeast in the future, but it's a little bit too far out to say what's certain about. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days regarding what would happen after this storm. This is what the GFS model is forecasting when it comes to the 500 millibar height anomaly as we approach Friday of next week, when this storm system is located in the Midwest. We do see a very strong ridge, which is the reason why the GFS model wants to steer this just to the north enough to bring snow to the Midwest as well as the interior northeast, while bringing primarily a rain event for the coastal northeast. And another thing I want to point out is that the ridging in the GFS model scenario just to the north of this low pressure system is a lot weaker, so we see the storm move a little bit further northward since there isn't a strong ridge that's trying to push it further southward. And we see the snow a little bit further northward to where Michigan, Wisconsin, and a lot of the northern Midwest get involved. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how this ridge builds going into next week. Now let's take a look at the European model scenario. With the European model scenario in the same time period as the GFS model, Friday of next week, when this storm system is located in the midsection of the country, we do see quite a huge difference, because just to the north of this low pressure system, the ridge is a lot stronger, which is forcing this low pressure system to move further southward into Oklahoma and Texas. And we see a much stronger ridge overall along the East Coast, but for the most part, it's very similar when it comes to where it wants to bring the snow to the interior northeast. But the key difference is that the European model does not want to bring this as much snow to the Midwest and primarily brings a heavy snow to the interior northeast, while the GFS model brings more snow to the Midwest thanks to a little bit less ridging that's just to the north of this trough. But we're going to need to see if this ridge ends up getting weaker as we get closer and closer to the actual event to really determine if we'll see snow for closer along the East Coast. Taking a look at the GFS's model's forecast, we do see that the GFS model wants to bring very heavy snowfall to the interior northeast, where many areas are experiencing over a foot of snow and 6 to 12 inches of snow at the very least. And this snow extends even further westward into Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan could get involved, Wisconsin, and a little bit of Minneapolis as well, thanks to the weaker ridging that's expected to be just to the north of this low pressure system with the GFS model scenario. But we do see along the East Coast, maybe Boston gets involved with snowfall, but other than that, New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington DC experience a rain event in this scenario, but there's still that possibility the snow could move eastward. Now let's take a look at the European model. The European model is showing a very similar scenario when it comes to snow in the interior northeast, but very different when we look further westward, where the European model does not want to bring the snowfall further westward into the Midwest thanks to a lack of ridging or more ridging that's expected to be just to the north of the low pressure system. But we do see a little bit more snow further southward, which is definitely something to keep in mind. And then again, along the coastal northeast, we don't see any snowfall, but don't rule out the possibility the snow could move further eastward. So to conclude, it seems like the interior northeast will likely receive snowfall out of this snowstorm. It is a little bit more uncertain moving towards the coastal northeast as well as the areas further westward into the Midwest. If you'll experience snowfall, depends on how much ridging there will be just to the north and to the east of this low pressure system. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. But I thank you guys for watching.